There is a moment every narcissist believes will never happen. Not the day you leave, not the day you stop answering, not even the day you disappear from their life. The moment they fear the most comes much later. It is the day they realize you are never coming back. Not because you found someone else, not because you are trying to punish them, but because something inside you has finally changed. The emotional bond they spent years creating through manipulation, guilt, fear, and intermittent affection is suddenly gone. For the first time, they can no longer feel your emotional presence. And that changes everything. In today's video, you'll discover what truly happens inside the narcissist's mind when they understand they've lost you forever. Why many suddenly try to return after months or even years of silence, and why their greatest fear was never losing the relationship, it was losing control over you. Because the moment a narcissist realizes they no longer occupy your mind, your emotions, or your future, they are forced to face something they have spent their entire lives running from. Themselves. A narcissist rarely believes you will leave for good, not because they love you too deeply, but because every relationship has taught them the same lesson. People come back. After the arguments, after the lies, after the broken promises, after the silent treatments, after the emotional abuse, someone always returned. Over time, this creates an illusion of permanent control. They begin to see your forgiveness not as an act of love, but as proof of their power. Every second chance reinforces the belief that they are untouchable, that no matter how far they push you, no matter how much pain they cause, you will eventually miss them more than you value your own peace. This is why many narcissists become increasingly careless. They stop pretending. The mask begins to fall. The manipulation becomes more obvious. The disrespect becomes more frequent. Because in their mind, there are no real consequences. They believe they already know the ending. You'll cry, you'll wait, you'll question yourself, and eventually, you'll come back. What they fail to understand is that something is quietly changing inside you. Long before you physically leave, your emotional attachment begins to die. And because narcissists measure love by control rather than connection, they almost never notice it happening. By the time they finally realize you've detached, the process has already become irreversible. The day a narcissist realizes they've lost you forever doesn't begin with a dramatic confrontation. It begins with your silence. Not the silence used to manipulate, not the silence that secretly hopes they'll reach out. A different kind of silence. The kind that no longer expects anything. You stop checking their social media. You stop wondering what they're doing. You stop replaying old conversations in your mind. For the first time in a long time, your life begins to move without them. At first, they barely notice. They're usually focused on finding new attention, new admiration, new validation. They assume you're still emotionally attached, that you're simply waiting. But then something unexpected happens. You don't react. You don't chase. You don't defend yourself. You don't respond to the subtle messages designed to pull you back in. And that's when uncertainty begins to replace certainty. The narcissist starts testing the connection, a random text, a social media interaction, a mutual friend mentioning your name, sometimes even an unexpected apology. Not because they've changed, but because they need proof that the emotional door is still open. When those attempts no longer produce the reaction they expected, something inside them begins to crack. For the first time, they are no longer controlling the story. And that realization becomes the beginning of a psychological collapse they never imagined. The moment a narcissist realizes they've truly lost you, something far more significant happens than sadness. Their illusion of control begins to collapse. For years, their identity depended on one dangerous belief: I can always get them back. That belief protected them from facing something much deeper, the possibility that someone could finally see through the mask and choose to walk away forever. Carl Jung believed that every human being creates a persona, a carefully constructed image presented to the world. But when a person's entire identity depends on that persona, reality becomes a threat. For a narcissist, the persona isn't simply a social mask. It becomes their psychological survival. As long as someone admires them, fears them, or keeps fighting for them, the mask remains intact. But when you disappear emotionally, the mirror disappears with you. And without that mirror, the narcissist is left face to face with the parts of themselves they have spent a lifetime avoiding. Shame, emptiness, insecurity, the fear of being insignificant. This doesn't automatically lead to self-awareness. In fact, most narcissists will do almost anything to escape those feelings. Some become furious. Some suddenly become affectionate. Others begin searching for someone new to replace the validation they lost. The behavior changes, but the goal remains exactly the same: to silence the unbearable feeling that someone they believed they controlled has finally become free. Carl Jung warned that whatever we refuse to confront within ourselves eventually returns with greater force. And when the narcissist realizes you've truly gone, their greatest enemy is no longer you. It's the shadow they can no longer escape. One of the biggest misconceptions about narcissists is that they come back because they finally realized your worth. But that's rarely what happens. They don't return because they suddenly learned how to love. They return because they can no longer tolerate losing control. When a narcissist realizes you've truly moved on, the silence becomes unbearable. Not because they miss the relationship, but because they miss the certainty that you were always emotionally available. Carl Jung believed that what we try to possess eventually begins to possess us. The narcissist spends years trying to control other people, without realizing that their need for control has become their own prison. This is why many narcissists suddenly reappear, sometimes after months, sometimes after years. A casual message, a birthday wish, a memory from the past, an apology that seems surprisingly sincere, or even a dramatic confession they've never made before. To an outsider, it may look like genuine remorse, but beneath the surface, the question they're really asking is much simpler. Do I still matter to you? Because if you respond, the emotional connection still exists. And if the connection still exists, then hope remains. Hope that the old dynamic can be restored. Hope that the cycle can begin again. But when they discover that your peace no longer depends on them, something changes forever. For the first time, they understand that they didn't simply lose the relationship. They lost access to the version of you they believed would always return. And that realization is something many narcissists never truly recover from. After everything we've explored, you might still be asking one question. Does the narcissist truly suffer when they realize they've lost you forever? Sometimes, sometimes not. But Carl Jung would say that this is the wrong question. Because as long as your healing depends on what happens inside the narcissist, you're still emotionally connected to them. You're still waiting for something. An apology, a confession, a moment of regret, proof that they finally understood the pain they caused. But true freedom begins the moment you no longer need any of those things. Jung believed that the deepest transformation happens when we stop searching for answers in another person and begin searching within ourselves. For too long, your attention revolved around them, what they were thinking, who they were with, whether they missed you, whether they had changed, whether they would finally realize your worth. But every moment spent trying to understand the narcissist was a moment taken away from understanding yourself. And perhaps that was the greatest loss of all. not the relationship, but the distance you created between yourself and your own identity. The day the narcissist realizes they've lost you forever may become one of the hardest days of their life. But the day you realize you no longer need their approval, their validation, or their presence is the day your real life begins. That is what Carl Jung called the path toward the self. Not defeating another person, but becoming whole again. So perhaps the story was never about the narcissist losing you. Perhaps it was always about you finally finding yourself. Because when you become the person you were always meant to be, there is nothing left for the narcissist to take and nothing left for you to fear. Before you leave, if this video helped you understand something you've been carrying for a long time, then I want to invite you to become part of the inner shadow. Subscribe if you're ready to explore the hidden forces that shape human behavior through the wisdom of Carl Jung, shadow work, narcissism, and deep psychology. Every week, we uncover the patterns most people never see, the ones that quietly shape our relationships, our fears, and our lives. If this video gave you a new perspective, please leave a like. It helps YouTube recommend this message to people who are still trapped in the same cycle you may have escaped. And if someone came to your mind while watching, someone struggling to let go of a narcissist, share this video with them. It may be the understanding they've been searching for. Final reflection: the day the narcissist realizes they've lost you forever is not the most important day in this story. The most important day is the day you stop measuring your worth by whether they regret losing you, because real healing doesn't begin when they finally understand your value. It begins when you do. Carl Jung believed that the greatest journey is not changing another person, it's becoming who you truly are. Perhaps the relationship was never meant to define your life. Perhaps it was meant to awaken the part of you that had been forgotten. The part that no longer begs to be chosen. The part that no longer fears being alone. The part that finally understands peace is worth more than approval, and freedom is worth more than closure. So don't wait for the narcissist to realize what they lost. Realize what you've gained. Your peace, your voice, your identity, and the life that was waiting for you the moment you chose to never look back. Because sometimes the greatest victory isn't that they lost you, it's that you finally found yourself.